Stared at him, kind of laughing still, thinking that he was going to start laughing too to tell me it was a joke, but he didn't. He said, "You think it's so funny? You think it's funny, bitch? You think you're a funny bitch?" And he slapped me again. Like, it was clear it wasn't a joke anymore. And I stopped laughing, but I didn't know what else to do. You know, I didn't know what to do. You would think you would have a response, but I, as a woman, had never been hit like that. I'm an adult, and I'm sitting next to the man I love, and he slapped me for no reason, it seemed like, and I missed the point. It was that stupid. Second slap, I know he's not kidding, but I don't know what else to say or do, so I just stared at him. I didn't say anything, I didn't react, I didn't move or freak out or defend myself or say, "What are you doing? You're crazy." I just stared at him because I didn't know what else to do. And he slaps me one more time. Hard. I lose my balance. At this point, we're sitting next to each other on the edge of the couch, or I was on the edge of the couch. And I'm all of a sudden realizing that the worst thing has just happened to me that could possibly happen to you. I realized that I wish so much he had said he was joking, because it didn't hurt. It didn't physically hurt me. I was just sitting there on this carpet, looking at the dirty carpet, wondering how I wound up on this carpet and why I never noticed that the carpet was so filthy before, and I just didn't know what else to do. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to react. I just sat there thinking, how much time do I have till I figure out what I need to do? Because, God, did he just hit me? No, I didn't want to leave him. I didn't want this to be the reality. I didn't want to have the man I was in love with. I know you don't come back from that. You know, I'm not dumb. I know you can't hit a woman. You can't hit a man. You can't hit anyone. You can't just hit somebody because I knew it was wrong, and I knew that I had to leave him. And that's what broke my heart, because I didn't want to leave him. I thought if I got up out of that room, I would leave the best thing that ever happened to me.
So it's like I got all these thoughts going through my head, because she's an actress, so she could be a very, very good actress. She's believable the way she shows her emotions. So it's like, on the one hand, because I'm trying very hard not to be biased, because of course I'm a Johnny Depp fan, and she's so much more emotional.
At the door, because I knew I needed to.
And being a woman, it makes you want to feel for her.
And I remember looking at him.
She's like, the emotions on her face are so believable.
Because I didn't know what else to do.
Yet,
and
I try to listen to her talk and then think about the things I've heard on the audios and the things that you know that she's done, and all the physical violence she's portrayed towards him. And I'm like, I'm wavering as to how to take all this.
And he's crying, tears. I mean, just falling out of his eyes.
She has a very expressive face.
And he grabs my hands, and he's touching my hands, and he's saying to me, "I will never do that again. I'm so sorry, baby. I put the fucker away. I thought I killed it, and it's done. I thought I put the monster away, and I've done it before."
And she's, obviously, I would assume she's not doing it on her own. Maybe she is, but she's looking very much like at the jury, so she can connect with them.
I just remember thinking that.
So I'm thinking, if I was sitting in the jury and she's looking at me with all this expression and emotion in her face, it's going to be hard not to feel for her.
Right? That means it will happen again, no? Like, I've seen the health class videos, like everyone else. And I got up in my car, I walked to the car, I didn't say anything. I made a point to not say, "Oh, it's okay," or anything like that. I just didn't say anything. Got up, I went to the car, I sat in my car, and I felt like I sat there forever. I didn't want to turn the key. I just leaned my head up against the window, and I remember just seeing my breath on the windshield, on the glass of the window of the door, just seeing my breath. And
the one thing is, I'm a crier,
myself
so people make me cry very
restraint
easily. If they cry, I cry. If they look like they're about to
know
cry,
what I
I
should
cry.
do in this
So I
moment,
kind of was
because
thinking too, that could be a good indicator. If she doesn't make me
Heartbroken.
cry, then maybe that's something in me
And I sat there
recognizing
for a long time, and
the bull. It's like you feel guilty to
drove
even
home.
suggest that she's lying when you listen to her tell her story, because it's so bad.
do after
If it was
that?
true, it's so bad, and then it makes me feel bad that Johnny Depp would possibly
know.
actually be that person,
remember
especially
what I
with
did when I
everything
got
you know
home.
about him
I
from
don't
his past,
remember.
with the way he is with people in general, the way he's always been known to interact with people. So it doesn't really
I
seem
went to my therapist.
right. It seems like it's got to be that she's full of
told
crap.
her-
And I know it's not
Objection,
gray.
Griffin.
It's going to be, I mean, it is gray, I should say. It's not going to be all,
what she made.
everything she says is bull.
went
Everything he
home,
says is
and
true.
a
Or,
few days
there's going to be
later,
perception in there.
started getting, I actually don't know how many days later, but I started getting calls and texts.
But
from
she
Johnny,
started out so, like, I don't understand. She's saying, like, when he slapped her,
apologizing
this was
profusely.
shocking.
I mean, just
This doesn't happen. But yet she's already
he said,
been
"I'd rather cut
accused
my
of
hand
physical
off
violence
than ever
towards her wife.
lay
So this
on
is
you,
nothing
lay
new to
upon
her,
you,
but she's
and
portraying it
that
as if
way
it's
of
this
talking,
new
it's
shocking
like
thing that she's
poetry."
never experienced.
And he showed up to talk, like, with the understanding that, he understood I could never forgive him, and it was done. So I felt kind of safe in saying, okay, let's have a talk, or, yeah, we'll talk. I think I know I just wanted to see him, and he comes over, brings me gifts. He brought me a couple of cases, actually, of that Vega Sicilia wine that we've heard about, which is a really nice, expensive wine that I could never, at that time, dream of affording, and we talk, and he tells me that he had put this thing away, that I could trust him, that it would never happen again. Of course, it would never happen again. But he put
She's
this thing
using a
away.
lot of
He
the
killed the fuckers.
Power
And
differential, too, that he's this
said to
rich,
me,
famous
"Over and
actor,
over
and I
again,
was just a nobody.
put that fucker away. I killed that monster.
A young nobody who was
I'll kill
just
it again,
so
it's done.
flabbergasted that he was
I
paying
will never
attention
lay a
to
hand on you
me.
again." And I wanted to believe him, so I chose to.
Chose to stay in the relationship.
Yeah, I did. I believed it, but I believed it wouldn't. I believed that there was a line he wouldn't cross again, and that was it.
And so you stayed, correct? You stayed in the relationship.
Yes.
So is this a good
This
time
feels
to-
fake.
Right.
Keep going a little longer. please.
Okay.
It feels
So
mean to
could
say
you
that. It
please
feels like
describe for
a
the
woman
jury
being abused. How shitty of me to say it's
evolution of
fake.
your relationship after that time with Johnny?
I don't know how long it was until things got bad again. He did start drinking again. I remember it was almost, he'd start drinking again, the disappearing thing, the coming back. He'd come back like in the middle of the night to my house. And it would be unclear to me, drunk, often really drunk, and kind of accusing me, but not directly. Nothing was very direct. It was a lot of accusations, but they were veiled. What I was wearing, who I was with, why didn't I text him back? If I didn't text him back right away, this is when I was at my place in Orange, sometimes he would show up to catch me. Like, that was a pretext for coming over, and by the time we were done talking, I would have thought I had convinced him that I loved him, that I only loved him, there was no one else, and then that we were back in an upswing and would go back to good, loving, like sick, romantic love, like kind, sweet, velvety love. And then it would be something I said, why did you say it that way? You know, if I had to leave for an audition, I could guarantee that when couldn't guarantee, but 2 of those in a row, and when I came back, he was angry at me, you know, and I wouldn't necessarily know
See,
why.
if the jury doesn't know
Like,
anything
at first
about
it was
him, I
direct, and
mean,
then it
I
became
understand
really
none of
direct.
us know anything
Then the
about either one of
punching,
these people.
of the
They're
walls
humans
next
who
to my
have
head
lives
was
that we're
just
not a part of.
constant at that
But you
time
can
in
get a feel for
2012.
people over time
when he was
based off what
drinking,
other people say about them, people who've met him,
eventually
people
that
who work with
became,
them.
you
And
know,
like when I
him
watch them, I
accusing
think,
me
what
of
is the
cheating.
jury
I'd defend
thinking?
myself. I'd
Because if you
say,
didn't know Johnny Depp,
you know, that's crazy.
he's
You're wrong.
drawing
I
or
would
writing.
never,
He's
the normal
not
thing.
paying attention. I mean, he probably
And,
is, but he's.
It would
And then he
escalate
kind of
to
talks
the
and
point
smirks and
where he'd
laughs
push
with his
me
lawyer. But
or
he's
shut
been
me
dealing
down,
with this
and
crap
then I'd
for
get
so
back
long.
up, and
He's heard
this
these
happened several
stories.
times, that's why it's not more specific, I suppose.
He might be sitting there
When I
thinking,
get
this
back
is
up,
all
I'd
the same old
I'd look him in the eye.
stuff.
To the point of getting up and looking him in the eye. It's my way of defending myself at that time.
So in a way, it's like he's consistent with his
and
behavior.
I'd look at him.
She's not
asked me if
consistent.
I
She does a
wanted to
lot
go
of,
again.
when she was listening to testimony,
me
she
back
did a lot
down.
of smirking.
Eventually, it just hit me. Remember, he hit me in the face when I denied having an affair with my ex-wife, my ex-partner at the time. And he said he had proof. I denied it. And I was walking out of the bedroom, slapped me across the face. I turned to look at him. And I said, Johnny, you hit me. You just hit me.
I'm going to ask you, Michelle, can you bring up 1783, please?
What number again, please?
I'm sorry.
What number?
Defendants 1783.
1783, thank you.
Do you recognize this picture?
Yes, I do.
And could you tell us what it is?
It's a picture of my face with a note that Johnny left for me by the coffee. Typically is where we'd leave notes like that.
And does this accurately depict the scene portrayed?
It was one of those scenes. As embarrassing as it sounds now, I don't know which scene this came from. There was a lot. It escalated quickly, fast, and it became.
Amber, let me ask it a different way.
Thank
you. Is this a picture of you? Is it an accurate picture of you?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to move the admission of 1783.
Your Honor, we have an objection. May we approach?
Sure.
So, yeah, it's like all these different things. I'm trying to, like, in my mind, figure her out and figure out the situation and think about how they both appear to other people. She's so pretty, and she's got such a pretty smile and almost an innocent look about her when she's not scowling. She scowls a lot, so that makes her look very bitchy. And I'm usually I'm pretty good in my own mind of not letting my biases affect what I think is true. So I totally understand. I've been a fan of Johnny Depp since I was young and think he's great as far as an actor. Think he's good looking, think he's a great he's great with his fans. He's known for being good with his fans. He's so many different actors who've said he's such a gentleman and so good to work with. I've watched interviews with him over the years. So I'm absolutely biased. Didn't know anything about her. And honestly, I don't think I even knew that him and her were a couple because I didn't really pay attention to all this stuff when it first happened. I think I knew a little bit about it. And then I saw her in Aquaman.
In 2012.
And I didn't even realize it was her until later.
Pretty, you know, relative to what it became, pretty.
But then when I heard about this trial and I started looking into it a little bit and trying to figure out, or is this poor girl being
backhanding. Well, it
like
went from-
ridiculed because he's Johnny
It
Depp
went
and
from
she's
this
just
eggshell,
Amber Heard?
kind of, you're walking on eggshells.
But I don't know, when you listen to the audio,
right, but you don't
it
know
just
what you're doing
feels
wrong.
like no matter what gets said, you
and
got to
then I
go
was
back to the
doing
audio,
something
and
wrong
it's
clearly,
and the stuff
but
that
it was unclear within
she
the
said.
scope of an argument. What
I understand the
was
people who
up
work for him
against,
might,
so it would shift from,
say what
a
he
rumor
needs them
he'd
to say.
heard
I get
was
that could
with,
be a truth.
A friend,
But I don't
or
think
had
so.
been photographed standing too close to a male person. That was a person I had had something with, and I was lying to him about, and it would be eggshells, accusations, and then he would explode. It started with throwing things, destroying the property, and screaming at me. I remember the screaming at me was the worst, because I kind of always felt like I had done, I had to defend myself. I had to tell him, so he didn't think these things were true. And sometimes, he would shift accusations while I'm trying to dispel one accusation. He'd start another one, and nothing I could do to calm him down. It seemed like I'd walk away, and that would make it worse. I remember in my apartment in Orange, he would grab me by the hair, or he'd grab me by the arm, pull me into him, scream at me that way. He'd smash things around me, then he would smash things very close to me, and then he would just hit me. And it started with slapping, and it got to be like repetitive slaps where he'd hold me in a position and slap me multiple times in a row. Then it would be, eventually I later would either push him off of me, or I'd try to hit his hands away from me. I tried to, not in 2012 so much. At that time, I was mostly, my defense was, I'd go some other place. Like, I don't know how to describe that. It was, I'd focus on something else. I'd stand up, look at him, try to stand up to him that way. Later, I adopted other kind of strategies to deal with it, but at the time in 2012, it was, he'd have this blowout, and then he would leave, disappear, and I'd be committed to not talking to him. I'm done with this relationship. I can't take it anymore. Said that so many times. And then he'd come back, clean and sober, telling me he had a chip. He didn't have any chips, but he would say, I've gone to meetings. I have a sober companion now. I'm doing this program. I'm reading this. I'm doing this. And he was done with drugs and alcohol for good this time. And he'd come back in my life, and with the combination of him being sober and having gone through this horrible thing where I felt like my heart ripped out of my chest, like a relationship ending is hard, I think, for anyone, but ending under that circumstance is really painful. And so when he'd come back, it would almost feel like a solution to that, and it would feel great, and we would be good again, and he'd be extra nice and extra apologetic and extra loving, and we'd be back in the good bubble, the warm glow. And eventually I'd get bored, and then I'd see him drinking again. When I started to get upset, noticing the pattern of the violence going with the drinking and drugs, then he started sneaking it. So it became less clear, and I'd have to look for clues as to what he was on. So I just knew how to react, Johnny on speed is very different from Johnny on opiates. Johnny on opiates, very different from Adderall and cocaine Johnny, which is very different from Quaaludes Johnny. But I had to get good at paying attention to the different versions of him. 2012, I was in the beginning stages of this, just learning these patterns. I was just learning that drinking kind of correlated with the violence.
And did you confide in anyone about these issues you were having? I think she
She's a
can
very
say-
good speaker.
I think she can say if she told anybody.
She makes a lot of faces at the jury,
Did-
kind
did
of
you-
like a,
Did you tell anyone?
kind of thing.
Yes, I did.
Who did you tell?
I told my therapist.
And I noticed when she was
I
listening
eventually
to
told
other
my
people testify,
let's
she
go
would
ahead and take a
change her
look
face
at,
expression based on what was being said. If they were saying something positive towards her that was
150,
somewhat
150.
like talking about her being mistreated, her eyes would get very sad and puppy dog-ish, and like the side of her mouth would crinkle like she's fighting back tears. But then when somebody was saying
Your Honor, I'm
something
going to
else, there was
object
this
on
whole
hearsay.
other side to her that you would see. So I feel like right now, if somebody hadn't watched Johnny Depp's, haven't been watching any of this, and they just came into this part, looking at him, doodling, smirking occasionally to his lawyer, or shaking his head, and then looking at her emotional and fighting back, you know, sadness as she tells about this horrible thing that happened to her, you'd probably side with her if you didn't know anything at all. But you got to take all the facts into consideration. Another thing that I always find interesting is her lawyers seem to be twisting, taking certain aspects and using them to create a narrative. I pick up on that. They're trying to create a narrative. Whereas I don't see his side doing that so much. I don't see them looking like they're trying to create anything. They're just letting him be him. They're asking the questions, and it just doesn't feel like something like there's this idea being tried to sculpt it. You know, they're sculpting this thing. With her, everything from the way she's testifying to, like I said, the way her lawyers question and the way they kind of use a little bit of trickery, like they'll use a certain text in such a way and leave something out, or leave out parts of it that he tried to explain that you're taking that out of context and explain it, and then they'll like cut him off real quick. They don't want him to be able to do that because they want to use it. And obviously Johnny Depp is a kind of eccentric person. Like they say, he's very poetic in the way he speaks, and got this interesting way about him. And text, I always tell people texting is weird because if you don't have expression, facial expression or tone, you can take a funny text and it can seem mean. So some of the texts they used, and then luckily his team came back and let him explain the context of the text, and they took one that was a joke, and it was very clearly a joke when he explained it, or like the thing about burning her body and drowning her. And he said it's from Monty Python. That's not something he came up with out of his brain and said. Well, someone who doesn't know that, never watched Monty Python would have no clue and think, oh my God, how disgusting. When we watched that the first time, I remember my husband looked at me and was like, damn. Like, ooh, he come up with some really nasty things, but he didn't come up with that. He's mimicking one of his favorite, movies from when he was young. So, that annoys me, and it makes me suspicious when they do stuff like that. And I hope the jury is smart and paying attention to all of these things, because I don't know who's fully telling the truth. I wasn't there. But just as I'm trying not to be biased, because granted I have a bias towards him because I like him as an actor, and he's been this famous person that I've thought was wonderful for all these years, but she's a woman.
Why
and I have a sympathy
did you
towards a woman
decide
who's been
to
abused
confide in
or
your
hurt.
mother?
So in a way I could bias towards
About the
her a
issues
bit,
you were having with Mr.
because I'm pretty good at playing the devil's advocate usually. I don't have to hate her because everybody else hates her.
I think I felt safe talking to my mom because I knew that she understood.
Oh, and I'm
these
sorry.
dynamics,
That's one
and
thing I want to bring up. When they were talking
wouldn't
to the
judge me
doctor earlier,
for
the doctor
staying with
admitted
him, for loving
that
him.
even though the mother knew
Even though,
that he was abusing her, she said, I
this was
still
happening
love
and
him.
it's
I'm sorry, I
happening to
have
me.
2 daughters. I don't care how long I've known him.
I knew she would
If a man
understand.
abuses my daughter,
When approximately
he better
did
stay
you
the hell
start
away from me, because I'm going to go to
confiding
jail.
in your
And there's
mom
no
about
sentence
your
where
issues with Mr.
his
Depp
name
and
and love are together at that point. There's no way a
Objection,
mother
hearsay,
could love a man who
compound.
abuses her daughter.
Sustains to calm down.
When did you start confiding in your
Unless her mother
about
doesn't
the
give a
abuse
crap
you
about her, I guess.
We're suffering at the hands of Mr. Depp?
I was confiding in her from the very beginning about the abuse, the psychological abuse, the kind of control, the disappearing, the not knowing where he was, then he'd come back and sometimes in the middle of the night, the constant accusations, like that sort of thing. I talked to her about probably from the very beginning. The fact that I was secret, I had to hide. I couldn't tell any of my friends that I was with him for a long time because he told me everyone would blame me for the split with him and his partner. So I had to kind of sneak around and kind of get brought to his house, typically in a secretive way, and then he'd come to mine in a secretive way, and it was just all very, so very isolating. And I confided with her at the very beginning on that sort of thing, and then later opened up to her about some of the violence. I did it gently. First I just wanted to have someone to talk to about how scary it was. The rage and the uncontrolled violence, the rage that this man had, and why it was
Objection,
pointed
Your
at
Honor.
me.
Hearsay. May we approach, please?
Okay.
Yeah, this whole thing with her, I mean, you never understand the dynamics of a relationship. Some people's relationship is just weird. But as a mother, this is not making sense to me at all. You're telling your mother that he's abusive towards you, and your mother's not just begging you to leave him, and he has a good relationship with your mother?
Talk about the case.
Your
We're doing outside
abuser?
research. Okay, we'll see you soon.
I mean, I don't know. She says her parents were like heroin addicts, but her mom worked for the state. I don't know. Everything just seems weird. So yeah, so far, like I said, if you don't know anything else and you're just watching her, she's great. She is very expressive. She is very smart and uses her words very wisely, uses her expressiveness very wisely. It could all be legit, but I'm guessing this is just like with her lawyers, how they try to manipulate. She's trying to manipulate. And the fact that she's staring at the jury while she talks a lot, I think she's trying to confide in them and kind of grab their hearts. And that's all fine. But I mean, just if you're trying to look at it from a, non-biased viewpoint, I was thinking that I was wondering if she would win me over somehow, because I don't care if everybody else hates her. I don't have to hate her because everybody else hates her. But, and I can, as much as I've always liked Johnny Depp and, thought he was adorable and everything else, and I just, she's talking about, the soup kitchen and all this stuff. Johnny Depp dressed up and went to hospitals. I mean, and you could just see so much videos, so much of him with his fans being so kind, so loving. So yeah, so far I'm impressed with her acting skills, I think, more than her. I think she's, so far, I mean, she might win me over, but so far I think she's full of it. And not to say that everything she's saying is bull. I'm sure he uses drugs and alcohol a lot, and maybe a lot of it's true to some degree, but I don't, you don't need to lie or exaggerate or dramatize if you're telling the truth.
Okay guys, that's all for now. If you like the video, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when we drop new videos. Thanks for hanging out with us. See you on the next one.